Hello to everyone. You can hear me properly. Welcome to this panel. And thank you, Suzanne, for giving us the opportunity to discuss that very important subject that are co-production. Co-productions are the ideal way for me to produce a film. Why? Because it's fostering people to work together, creators to know and to work together and to know each other, stories to travel, and the organization I'm managing, which gather 200 producers coming from 36 countries in Europe, are all co-producing. It's like a drug. If you start, you don't want to end up because you extend your ideas, you extend your knowledge, you extend your access to talents, and my only question is why every film is not co-produced. But that's not the subject of today. The subject of today is how, what are the dynamics we can see in the region and how these figures could be fostered. So I would like maybe to start by you, Derya.
Sure.
You wanted to share some figures about what's happening in the region?
Of course.
Please.
Yeah. As we all agree on, co-productions brings positive effects for the number of viewers, size of the budget, intercultural empathy, and interaction. Surely there are pros and cons, of course. We all, producers, filmmakers, directors, aware of it. But as a result, we already have been convinced about the benefits of co-productions. However, we mainly believe co-production advantages. All around Europe, national film numbers are higher than co-production numbers. It has not been changed over the years. Most countries produce more national films than majority co-production ones. Only 2 countries in Europe produce more film as a majority co-producer than as fully national producer. These 2 countries, Belgium and Luxembourg. Actually, I have been surprising that I have figured out the average co-production level in Europe. It's only 20% in all around Europe. I'm talking about the co-production percentage. In turn, the share of co-production was below European levels, 20% in 13 countries. In 13 countries in Europe, co-production numbers was below 20%. That's the facts, that's the numbers about European countries' co-productions. And today we will talk about the Mediterranean co-productions situations, and we will talk about the reasons of lack of co-production situations and some ideas I think we will discuss about it. And before moving on, I would love to share some type of countries in Europe. In Europe, and people accept that 3 types of country. One, small countries with few production sources, usually due to size of the country or size of the production industry, which need a foreign partner for productions, like as Luxembourg, Slovenia, Cyprus, Montenegro. And another type of country, medium-sized country, medium-sized production countries which try to maximize their production potential by seeking co-production with foreign partners, like as Belgium, Ireland, Portugal, Croatia, Denmark, Sweden. And the last one, the third one, top producing countries which aim to maximize their production potential but with an industry and market that allow for a vast majority of fully national films. And as a result, not surprisingly, the share of co-production out of the total production volume in the top 8 co-producing countries in Europe was below 30% all around Europe. And we are talking about the biggest 8 countries, including France, Germany, Spain, Italy. And in some cases, unfortunately, such as Turkey, UK, is far below percentage 7. UK is 7, and Russia 12, and Italy 12 again, well below the European average 20%. Yeah, that's the some facts and numbers in European countries, and yeah, it's not promising actually.
It is promising. It is promising because it's a figure that is growing slowly and slowly, but still growing. And what you identify, then I'm interested into is the regions. What makes countries co-producing together? And I would like to ask Lynn to comment on that. Lynn is from Denmark. She's a producer. And you know that Denmark is not even named as a country. It's the Nordic. You lost yourself into a region that is co-producing more and more, even if you are very different. You know, usually the Finnish do not like very much the Danish, and you have conflicts from every country, but still you are very much co-producing. How can that happen? What makes a region a co-producing region, Lynn?
Denmark is an extremely small country. We are in total 6 million people, and therefore also the economy cannot at all be compared to bigger countries. So in order to produce films that are just a little bit higher than the very low budget, then we have to go and seek financing outside of Denmark. And from very early on, when Europe started co-producing, we have been very fast to get into all the systems and seek the ways to co-produce and to basically find financing for our films. and we also, of course, have a minority co-production fund at the Danish Film Institute. But yeah, for reasons of necessity, we had to go and co-produce with other countries in order to get our films made. And we have, I think, quite a big production volume compared to other countries as well, of our size.
And what makes it a success as it is today?
Sorry?
What do you think make it a success? Yes, the sound is a little bit terrible.
Yeah, it's very difficult to hear each other.
I don't know for you, but for us it's terrible, but we are trying to manage. So what do you think it has, how it has been transformed into a success? What are the reasons behind?
It all developed a lot around the whole dogma period in the 90s. At the same time, the European support institutions started up, Eurimage and the start of the media program at the time. And Denmark said, well, we cannot compete with the big countries with the bigger budgets, so how can we make cheaper films? And what do we have? And we have stories, we have actors, and we have directors. The rest we can't afford. so this whole dogma movement started, and it became like smart to do cheap films, and those are also easier to co-produce with other countries. I think that a lot started in that period.
I remember I was speaking once with Lars Blomgren, who produced that TV show that was very famous called The Bridge. And he said that in order to get the Danish involved into a co-production for a TV series, he has to cut the body in two on the border. Yeah. And so, and one was Danish and the other one was Swedish. And as it is, it was the only way for him to have this happening. we are speaking about a region, and I think that one of the success of, as well of the Nordic is the exchange they've had of programs between themselves, between broadcasters. They exchange program to each other in order to make some economies, but at the end of the day, it creates also a common language, not a common language, but a common culture that you share. Christophe, you are also, yes, a director of a festival in Montpellier called Cinemed, which is that region, the Mediterranean. How do you see that as, from a film perspective? Do you see that as a region? Do you see an interest from a country to another of each one's film? How do you see it?
Well, first of all, we have to remind that the role of film festivals have evolved, have changed. At the beginning, of course, film festivals were there to present film, or even when they were as a market, and when there is a market, it was to buy and sell already finished films. But now, film festivals are placed to be able to create and to meet professionals together, authors, producers, to be able to concretize a project of a film. So in many film festivals, you have now some platforms professionals. What we are doing here is a good example, to put in connection some authors, some directors who have a project of films. But as you know, film is an industry, and to do a long feature film costs a lot of money. And there are some interest of countries, of producers from other countries, to produce and to get in the production of the project of the film and to follow them in order to concretize them. That's what we do in Montpellier. That's what we have done for several years. The Cinemed meetings, where we can follow some directors that we discovered from with their short films, and who come with a project of long feature film or long documentary, and bringing some potential producers from all different countries will allow to see if they can deal together, if they are an interest to create and to concretize the direction, the realization of the films.
So the need of meetings, that's what you say. You organize that festival, yes, where it's a place where you can meet. A question for Alex. How did you land into Malta? You are from Canada, and it's out of the region, and you have been co-produced quite a lot, and under an official co-production. How does this happen? It's a long way.
Yes, it is a long way. However, the world is just getting smaller, isn't it? And culturally, so from North America, Canada has a treaty that works with all of the European and all of, sort of all of the official treaties. The US, of course, doesn't. So the way that we work with the US is usually commercial co-production. But we also have international treaty co-production, and it is a model that Canadians like to use. And it's a great way, and it's an interesting way. It's sort of, from the North American perspective, the pendulum is sort of swinging back to this co-production model again, which is an interesting one, because we, as Canadians and as co-productions, we retain our territories instead of giving the world away to a streamer, for example. We then retain our territories and we exploit those territories. And so the partnership really makes a lot of sense, and culturally there's many stories that are relevant to Canadian, European, sort of. Canada is also a British colony, for example, and so we have a lot of things in common to sort of with our European friends. So I've co-produced with Spain, with Germany, with Australia, with the UK, with Ireland. I mean, it's sort of, and it's really it's a really, I mean, co-production is never simple. It's always complicated in its own way to make sure that you're meeting the cultural elements from both sides and the creative elements and the financing. It's all sort of really a balance, but it works really well sort of in the ability to be able to storytell.
Thank you. You said something that is just another question, sorry. I think you used a tool that is called the bilateral treaty of co-production between Canada and Malta in order to have benefits from all. Are you always looking at a country to co-produce with that regards, meaning under the condition that there is a bilateral treaty? What is the possibility for you that offers that bilateral treaty? I don't know what is the knowledge of the audience of that treaty, so maybe you can give a little bit of insight about it.
With Malta specifically?
No, in general.
With any. So Canada can co-produce, so the bilateral, so the treaties, there's a list of treaties, and Canada can co-produce with any of them as long as we have a partner and the cultural elements meet. So I think with European treaties, it's a little easier potentially because you're closer in just sort of geographical closeness. In Canada, when we partner, it is typically with one, like I've done a tripartite with 3 countries as well. It's more about leveraging the balance between leveraging the creative elements and the financing out of all of those places. But Canada's treaty, I mean, we can certify official treaties with any of the countries with other official treaties.
Yeah. The benefit is giving to a film that is co-produced through a bilateral treaty is that the film is considered as national in each country. Yes. And so it can have access to the film fund,
the soft
being recognized national. Yeah. But the obligation is to have creative team working together. So that's
right.
The absolutely ideal basis of a collaboration. However, looking into the co-production in Malta, and I can see that there is a lot of service production, and you are almost, very few, there is only on one hand you can count the real co-production. Are you just, it's a question for you, are you just a service provider, or are you a real producer?
No, I like to define myself as a filmmaker, for starters. And as a company, Falcon, from inception, we've been working towards doing co-productions, because that's what we believe is, as we're all saying here, is the way to go. We obviously service productions because that helps us pay the bills, So Malta obviously is part of the European Cinematographic Convention, is a signatory to it. It also has an official treaty with Canada. In fact, one of our first co-production where we were lead was with Canada. We're in a bit of a peculiar situation because the focus is purely on servicing in our country, even though there hasn't yet been that, I guess, a leap of faith from the authorities or an understanding that co-production is the way to go, to bring out our stories, more importantly, but also to contribute to other stories as well. So, so yes, we've done over the past few years. We've done 3 co-productions. I think I dare say that as a company, we're on our island, we're sort of the ones who are doing most in that sense, focusing more on co-productions. 2 of the co-productions we did were with Norway and Germany. They were commercial co-productions because we don't have structures in place that can empower a Maltese producer to actually you know, the only tool we have is it's a very good tool, is the cash rebate. You know, we had a co-production fund which stopped in 2018. So we're kind of in that sense compared. Obviously, it's a challenge everywhere. It's of course, yeah, raising finance, but compared to our European neighbors, if we're looking north, we're at a disadvantage in that sense to a certain extent, but there's also the advantages of being small, and things can happen very quick here. So that's a plus. The other thing is basically that, yes, unless there's a shift in policy where the focus changes, and we can look at other countries. You can structure a rebate. You can have 2 tiers of rebate. So we have up to 40% rebate. So you can have, for example, an American show which is coming in, which is generally service, can take 30%. But if you have a smaller European production where you have you bring on a Maltese producer, you get a rebate of 40%. I believe Canada has a similar structure with its rebate, if I remember correctly. And the other thing, one of the most important things that I believe needs to change to help empower the Maltese producer is that the rebate is applied for by the Maltese producer. As it stands, the Maltese producer is squarely boxed as a service producer. So the foreigner comes in, they submit the application, they tick the box that they have a service provider, and they get the rebate. It's Maltese taxpayers' money, and from it doesn't make sense. What we're doing doesn't make sense. It's great for the economy, because it brings in. But the biggest issue is that film in Malta falls under the tourism industry, and it's seen as a feeder for the tourism industry, not as an industry per se. This Mediterranean Film Festival is a great initiative, bringing us all together. But we need to keep working towards giving importance, to co-production, of course.
Yes, and real co-production, as you mentioned, and not service providing. We were discussing together that aspect of Malta, which is giving money to foreigners to come and to shoot, which is good for the tourism, but not good for the industry. And it's not with a cultural objective, and it has to be reminded all the time. We've seen in Italy a change, a shift in that direction, where the tax credit, which is very generous, George Clooney is considered as Italian, to give you an example how generous it is, because he's living in Com. Now he's in France, but he was in Com. Is given only to an independent production company based in Italy, Italian nationality, and what is given to the film should give rights to the producers of an equal value, meaning if you have 40% that is coming from Malta, your share in the copyright is 40%. So it's very well balanced, and it should apply to everywhere, because my understanding of the situation today is that the American studio have discovered that soft money that we can give, we call that soft money that we can give, member states can give in Canary Island, in Malta, in Greece, everywhere. And for them, it's much simpler to shoot their films in Europe. We don't have strong guilds. We don't have the costs are not that high, and they have 30% cover. So there is an emergency for you. Otherwise, you will be lost. Yeah. And I think it's important also to build the industry, because one of the arguments that we can hear is, oh, you know, it's good because we have the team, we have the technical experiences, but you don't have producers. What do you think? How do you become a producer coming from the service provider?
I think you have to make that mind shift, that you know, that you want to sit at the table and partake in the process, and not just be sort of, not that there's anything degrading, don't get me wrong, but not just be sort of the waiter who is serving the people who are sitting at the table. Because at the end of the day, we all have a contribution to make. You know, when a project comes to shoot on the water, for example, we have a lot of people with super experience shooting out in open sea. You know, one of the projects we did, which was a co-production with Germany, a project called The Dive. We shot underwater, in open water, for 14 days. It's super challenging. It's not something that anyone can do, but we can, because we have the right people, the talent, the experience to do it. And this is what we can bring, you know. And I think when a person in anything that we do, if you have a share in something, you're going to give much more to the project, you know, rather than being told, get me a bottle of water, you know, and you provide the bottle of water, you know. So this is, we obviously, from a talent point of view, developing our own stories and going out there co-producing with other partners, we really need to focus on story and writers and directors. We have, in that respect, we have a big gap to fill, you know. And the other thing that I wanted to mention earlier is, because Malta is such a tiny rock, it's always important that the partner that you're working with understands that as a territory we are insignificant. So, for example, in the commercial co-pro we did with Norway, the Norwegian producer accepted that Malta would, us as the Maltese producer, ourselves, would partake in the Norwegian territory. So we were, you know, which was, and that is important, because unfortunately a lot of the time with co-productions, you know, you carve out everything and but we're not a territory here, we're just a village, you know. So I mean, it's like the only films which sell in Malta, as in which attract an audience, are the usual studio films, you know. So a European co-production, I can tell you, for example, one of the projects we did was War Sailor. You know, it was in the theater for a week, 5 days, and the ticket sales didn't even amount to 500 euros. You know, it's like nothing. It didn't even cover the cost of, you know, all the materials. So this is important as well.
Yes, the country. You keep your country, I keep my country doesn't work for a low capacity country. Yes, absolutely. And this has to be changed. Malta is not part of Eurimage, which is a fund that co-financed co-production on the gap financing on the last stage. I was surprised that it was not, but it was not. It is not. I know that Turkey is member, Canada is member. What did it bring to you to have Eurimage as a fund and to be able to apply for your co-production? Has it changed something in the industry? Both question for you, ladies.
Sure. Of course, Eurimage fund, you know, the last part of the lack of finance. And to get Eurimage, before you set up the co-productions, and you need to look for the right partners, right country, right crew, and already already get know each other before applying to a remarche, and it's like a marriage actually, and the two producers or three producers work together, and the film, when film finish, the relationships will keep on going until the end of the life, and it's really important. It's brings more interaction between two countries, three countries, and of course positive effects on the budget, volume. Yeah, absolutely. It's really, really good effects on producing films in our country and in all around Europe. But the problem is we have only a remarche. That's the main problem.
You don't have any film funds
In Turkey we have, but I'm talking about the international funding. We don't have any other international funding structure. In Turkey we have production funds, minority funds, and rebate and everything, but still not enough for rising co-productions. Producers and filmmakers need more motivation to look for co-producers to apply another fund like as a remarche I'm talking about.
Yes, but what were the consequences exactly? Did you see an increase in the number of co-production? Has it fostered the collaboration between EU and Europe, for instance,
Of course.
outside of your comfort zone where you were co-producing before?
I have co-production. I have co-produced 3 films, and it's a kind of obligation, and you need to figure out how to manage the whole process, how to be an international producer. You need to learn, and it's a really developing process for producers and for the directors. And directors has to communicate to other producer and the other crew from the other country or countries. It's challenging actually, but it's really useful for every part of the creative team. Yes.
What about you, Alex? What was the consequences of Eurimage opening to your country on the industry? Not only on you, on the industry.
Yeah, I mean, the way that Canada relates to Eurimage is a little bit different than the European countries because it can't be a majority Canadian co-production to have access to Eurimage. You have to meet, so Canada has to be a minority, but the project has to be initiated by the European producer, and all of the rules around the European producers' partnerships apply. So it's trickier to access Eurimage as a Canadian co-production because it has to hit all of those elements first. However, if it does, it's it's great to have access to that fund. And when we're putting together the financing, of course, we're always looking at outside of the cultural elements, we're looking at the soft money, so how to access as much as that. I often wonder if it's possible to finance an entire project with soft money, and so far I haven't been able to do it, but to get close to that, and but the access to financing, whether it be soft or even equity, is hard. It's tricky, it's challenging, not only for Europeans, but for Canada as well. Anybody outside of the US system ultimately looking for that money is challenging. So being able to leverage as much as possible, and I think it's the only fund outside of the soft money. In Canada, we have, again, we have access to telefilm, we have access to tax credits. We also do service, and our service, it's a graduated tax credit, so we have a lower level for non-Canadian projects, we have a higher level for Canadian projects, and international treaty co-production counts as a Canadian project as well. But outside of that, it's applying for those kinds of funds, it's difficult because it's administratively heavy. You have to apply, you really have to have the foresight of what your financing is going to look like, because you need a really long runway to get that money. So you have to have all the pieces together. It's almost like that money needs to be last in. And then when you're waiting for that piece, you have to have an alternative plan B. You never know if you're going to get it. You don't know sort of how you're going to close the gap if you don't. You then start looking towards much more expensive money. Anyways, we're getting into the nuts and bolts of what that looks like. But in this financing scenario that we're facing now, it's incredibly difficult. And so having those little pockets everywhere you can is so important. And I think, in Canada, we're looking to our agencies to increase the amount of money that's going into our projects, and I'm sure the Europeans are looking at the same, sort of just encouraging more money to go into co-productions, into domestic projects, instead of, just service, and looking outside of the tax credit system as well, and looking at the soft money that way as more of a cultural element as opposed to just a given, like the way the tax credits are. So.
Thank you. John, we have been speaking a lot about co-production in terms of finance, in terms of money. You are a talent. What is your view on that? Have you experienced that, and what is your perspective from a director's point of view?
Well, primarily a director, but also a producer through necessity on my first film. It was kind of my second film, but relates more to the subject here. My second movie was a movie called Filth, which was James McAvoy in the lead of an Irvine Welsh adaptation of a novel. And we found it so difficult to finance that film that it's all set in Scotland. Yeah, the whole movie is set in Scotland, but we ended up shooting that film in Scotland. So the co-production was Scotland, Germany, Sweden, and Belgium. Yeah, and we had co-producers and money coming from all those. And we were shooting scenes that was supposed to be a bathroom in a police station in Edinburgh, in the underground in somebody's apartment in Belgium, just to qualify for the, tax credit. So it was a great baptism of fire for me, because I was learning. I was trying to direct a movie, but also trying to understand what you have to go through to make a film happen. And if you really want, as a creative, if you really want your movie to happen, you better be prepared to do whatever it takes. Yeah. The film that I'm about to do next, or hopefully about to do next, is all set in North America, but we were going to shoot in North America. The budget didn't work out, so we're now looking at Serbia as a co-production for that. But the whole thing is set mainly in New York and in LA. But the times are so tough at the moment. You have to make it happen, right? You have to be creative. And there was a great example of a film that did just that. It was a Netflix movie called Fair Play. It was a great little film, Alden Ehrenreich and Phoebe Never, and made for $5 million US, set in New York, and they shot the whole thing in Belgrade and did some plates in New York. So anyway, point being that, again, if you want to make it happen as a creative, as a director, as a writer, whoever, you have to be willing to chase the money, and whatever that money comes from, it comes from Turkey or Denmark or Canada or Malta or France or wherever. You just have to get your mind around the fact that you may have to shoot in a toilet in Belgium for Scotland. So that was my first entry into it. It was a very early part of my career, but it was a great thing. And what it gave me is not only a understanding of what can take place. It's all smoke and mirrors, yeah? We're trying to, create illusion here, but the relationships that you make is as important for me as a filmmaker when you're doing that, and hence why I'm on this panel, because Alex is my producing partner now, having worked with her last year on a movie that we did up in Canada, and didn't know Alex until that point, and now wouldn't do a film without her, because I had such a great, experience on that production. So it's the relationships you make, as well as what you see, the potential for doubling places. I mean, the movie that we did up in Canada, none of it was set in Canada. It was all set in the US in the 1980s, and it's a less of a leap of faith to make that. But you're still, using the money that we got, the tax credit and the soft money out of Northern Ontario to make that happen. So, again, my philosophy of the whole co-production thing as a creative is whatever it takes, yeah? Whatever it takes to make the movie. You just have to get on with it and do it,
Thank you. Having all these people sitting together to discuss a film, we believe that it increases the quality of the film because you share your notes on the script, on the cast, on whatever, and being more numerous, we are more intelligent. That's my belief. Is that something that you can see from your perspective, Christophe? Seeing film coming from all the world, and in particular in the region, do you see that co-production is enhancing the quality and therefore the audiences?
Yes, because I think the film industry is the goal is to create together, and of course you've got a director, but you need producers to be your partners to develop the project, and the more you will work together, I think the best will be the film. It's how can I say that sometimes in France we have created a film industry just after World War II in order to keep a film industry and to resist to the American film industry, not to be so. And so little by little, this model of creation have spread everywhere, and sometimes there are some bad things in it when the money is here, but the talent are not here. I would take an example of North Africa, because we have developed many co-production with North Africa because of our history and so on. But one of these countries has developed a model like the National Film Center, who can give money to the directors directly if they have a simple script, and the film will be done without developing exactly how till the point it would be good to do the film. The co-production between different countries brings this dialogue and brings the project to the best it can be. I think it's really important not to take it at the first step, but to develop, take time. To do a film is not like this, and that's why that's a good thing in the co-production.
Yes.
Because of the numbers of interlocutors, and of course, after the developing, you have obligations to spend money in a country that will co-produce the film. But sometimes it's good because you have good technicians, good editor in this country that will rise the level of the film too, I think.
I've heard some voices that were responding to what you said, saying that you can finance directly a talent coming from another country. And actually, they found that very colonialist approach, because there is no money enough in the country, so you are going to pick up the talents directly to bring them in France. How do you answer to that? And that will be a question for you, because we have, for instance, producers from Romania, and when they are, setting up co-production, they have the talents, they develop the script with their local money, and then they put the money they have into the pot, but it's always less than the North countries, than the richer country, and then they lost the power on the project that they develop. It's a tragedy. So how do you answer first that criticism on colonialist approach from the North country to the South?
Well, first of all, I think that all the Mediterranean countries have something in common, a cultural topics, cultural things, and it's in a way natural to develop projects all together. Because at the end, you must think that the film must be seen by an audience. So where the film will be seen? In France, there is a large park of cinema, so people are in a way educated to see films and to see films coming from other countries. If you discover some talents at the other side of the Mediterranean, but there is no film industry in there, but you believe in this author, I think it's not a colonialism to put the money to develop it, because at the end it's to bring it to have his film done, and that's what he wants. And as you mentioned, you take the money where it comes, and the fact is that we believe in France in the preponderance role of the director. So it's very funny to see this year many films, an Austrian films coming from a director from Somali, a German films coming from a German film coming with the director coming from Turkey, and that you see these films very. The roots are really in the country of the origin of the director. So, but we are interested in these films, and it's interesting to have other voices, and I think it's a good way to have them. The term of colonialism will stay, but in terms of cinema, I think it's a cooperation, a collaboration.
Of course, I'm a little bit provocative, Christophe. You know me. But this raised a question that is more general, as I was mentioning. How do you set up a balanced cooperation when your level of resources at national level is very low? And then you have structurally a problem, because you will be always a minority producer, even if you are bringing everything. How do you see that coming from that little stone in the middle of the Mediterranean? How do you see that imbalance situation, as some of our producers have specified, or do you see you as strong enough to negotiate? Having the bargaining power to have a balanced situation between other co-producers?
I'll be able to answer that in a couple of years. No, joking. Actually, it's a very interesting question, because when we did the co-production with Canada, we were originally the minority co-producer. That's how the project was structured. The director is a Maltese Canadian who lives in Toronto. And anyway, we got together and we worked on this project and we developed it, but it came out of Canada, so the Canadian producer was the majority and we were the minority. As sort of the time we moved through the process, what happened is the Canadian producer lost finance very close to when we were going to start shooting, and we came in with other finance to make up for that loss, and it flipped. Malta, as in, we became the majority, and Canada became the minority. Because we had, because as Christophe mentioned, I believe it's all about, you know, the partners and getting on together and understanding. So from what it affected, the structure was such that we could do it. It was you know, bilateral, so 2 countries, so it wasn't a complicated situation. We're working on other co-productions where we are the minority, yes. So that is a fact, because there's only so much money we can bring to the table from here. But I joked when I said, I'll answer the question in a couple of years, because we're developing our own projects and we're seeking co-producers in other countries. So sort of, I think it all depends on you know, the partners you end up with, the understanding, and obviously the reality is that, you know, if it's going to be a commercial co-production and they are bringing more money, then you have to agree on the value that each party is bringing to the table, you know. So and give the value to the script, for example. What value does that have? And then it's a matter of agreeing on the terms, you know. But the truth, I think, as a small country, we are at a disadvantage because there's only so much money we can raise.
It's the moment to ask something.
Pardon?
It's the moment to ask something.
So yeah, I mean, we've been asking.
We want more Luzu.
No, but for instance, we are having some discussion at European level in certain negotiation of treaties where producers, independent producers, were asking to build partnership co-production deals that were not based on financial part, meaning we should value as well the artistic part, the fact that you are bringing the talent, that you are bringing the script, that you didn't pay that much because in your country it's less expensive, and so your 100,000 that you spend is value at 1 million. And I think it's important to dissociate that, because we are not speaking only about a financing process, we are speaking about collaboration.
Yes.
And I think it's important also for the low capacity countries in particular, where the resources are not huge, but having the tax credit entering into the pocket of them, going through the independent producers, could be also help you to rebalance the situation, because you will have a possibility to raise more money into the pot.
Yeah.
If the tax credit has to go through you, the cash rebate.
Yeah, that is a fundamental change that has to happen. You know, we've been saying this for years now. It's the Maltese producer who has to apply for the rebate and not the foreigner. I mean, because this doesn't make sense that a foreign company comes here and applies for the rebate and gets the money. You know, it's like, that's absolutely nonsensical. And we've been asking for this to change. It's a simple change in the guidelines. It does, you know. But again, it's about a mind shift that the Film Commission and the authorities have to take to empower the Maltese producer. Unfortunately, you spoke about colonialism. As you know, Malta was a colony for forever. We got independence since 1964.
I've heard that you were liberated from the French by the English.
Yes,
come on.
Exactly. God, who knows what would have happened if we remained under the French? But I guess, so there is still, unfortunately, that colonial mindset here, that the foreigner is better than us, that, you know, the foreigner. Yeah, and that has to change. It's like, and co-production changes this, because as we said before, you know, it's a collaboration. You're sitting around the table together, you're bringing, you know, and you pool in your resources on a co-production that we did with Germany. I actually pulled in the SFX supervisor from Germany, as in not the German producer. So it's a collaboration. It's not about, you know, it's pooling in your resources in every respect, you know. So yeah, that, as a small country, that little change will make a huge difference for Malta if we simply change who receives, the producer who receives the money. Because overnight, we're no longer a service producer, but we're the producer. Like,
Absolutely.
with that little change. And
with money that you can create assets, because a film is an asset. It's not only a human creation, it's also an asset. It's both of them, as was saying a very famous French author. Deria, you wanted to raise some ideas how to foster collaboration. You have already in mind. What do you have, apart from the one that was said?
I have some, I want to talk about, and I want to discuss with all panelists how to increase co-production possibilities, especially on Mediterranean countries and, of course, around Europe. I think there are maybe none pitching platforms in Mediterranean countries. I think, as far as I know, there was Mediterranean pitching platforms early 20s, but now there are none, as far as I know. And we can discuss how to increase pitching platforms, maybe development funding, small amount of development fundings among 3 or 4 Mediterranean countries or European countries together. We can discuss treaty agreements between 3 or 4 countries. There are a few, actually. There are some treaty between some countries, but not every countries in Mediterranean, as far as I know. We can discuss that kind of treaty possibilities. But first of all, there is no observatory office about Mediterranean co-production. And we can discuss how we can manage to set observatory office among Mediterranean countries. And I wonder the other speakers' ideas about increasing co-production possibilities. I would love to figure out what can we do for the next 5 years to increase co-production possibilities?
One of the questions that was raised in the paper that we received for the festival was, what could be the role of the film agencies in that aspect? Lane, my last question will be for you. What is the role of Nordic film entity, for instance, in fostering? What are the good examples that you are having in the Nordic that we can apply here in Mediterranean?
The Nordic Film and TV Fund?
Yeah.
That's a pan-Scandinavian funding by the Council of the North, or whatever it's called in English, where you have to have, in order to apply, you have to have at least 2 Scandinavian countries, and you have to have national support from the local film institute, and you have to have distribution theatrically in at least 2 countries, or TV sale in at least 2 countries. But you have to have, in order also to have the national film institutes, you have to have distribution and TV in your own country. So you just need another Scandinavian country with co-production support from the Film Institute and either TV distribution or theatrical distribution. Then you can apply for some top financing from this. And it's also combinable with Eurimage, for example.
So it's an over-the-top fund of funds that you have already had at your national level.
Yeah.
So it's a mini Eurimage at the end of the day.
Yes, a mini Scandinavian Eurimage, and it's depending on the National Film Institutes and TV station, and they are actually also partners in the fund.
I think it's a fantastic initiative because it's also with countries from the same region, and it's helping to build that region. And I think we have, gather a lot of possibilities and answers to the question how to foster collaboration and co-production dynamics in the region. I've noticed Eurimage, Malta should be part of Eurimage. There should be more markets and meetings. There could be as well a pan-regional funds. There should be identifying of talents and following the talents, as well as, of course, the measures of having the tax credit, the cash rebate that is going through Maltese producers in order to foster the local industry. So that's our message. Do you agree? Yes? That's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Do you have questions? No? So, yes, two, actually. Can you raise your hand? Yeah.
Hello. Thank you guys for this lovely panel. I have a question for Maltese representative there. Do you think before we start co-producing, we need to actually produce like content and get out the content there? And how we can do that? Because I think co-production it's super awesome. I've been to another panel about co-production in Europe. And apart from the financial aspect of co-production, I think ideas and, when you align things are very good. But do you think we are somehow lacking more real productions in Malta? And how do we can improve that, like the whole ecosystem of filmmaking in that sense, Not just like going around to get money or, having but everything like a good script, talents, I think as service providers, and I'm work as a service provider here, we are enhancing a lot of the gaps that we're trying to fill in the professional level. But again, I just want to know if...
That's a big question which needs a lot of time to answer. But the short... our indigenous film industry is pretty much in its infancy. Our film fund started in 2008 with 200,000. We're now 2024, and our film fund, which is going to be launched soon, is at 900,000. If you compare that to Iceland, Iceland has a film fund of 10 million. But apart from the financial aspect, there's also, we lack a lot of structures. Our national broadcaster, Lena, you mentioned how you have to have a TV broadcaster. Our national broadcaster is inexistent. It doesn't appear anywhere in this ecosystem that we need to create. Because we don't have it. So it's a multi-pronged attack, if you need, for need of a better word. We need to develop talent, as in writers and directors. Empower producers, because without producers, nothing happens. The servicing industry, I started out of the servicing industry. That's how I learned the craft, and I slowly worked my way up. So the servicing industry is a great training ground, and both. It's not one at the expense of the other, you know, both feed into each other. But there needs to be a serious policy change where film is truly seen as an industry in itself, as a cultural product, and not only, you know, film to attract investment into the country, you know. So, and it has to happen gradually, and there needs to be the powers that be need to sort of put the money where their mouth is and put in more money, because the truth is that film is an expensive medium, you know. So if you look at what I think the British Film Institute a couple of years ago had raised a fund of, I don't know, like 50,000, 500,000 sterling. I think they gave 50,000 to upcoming writers, directors, and commissioned about 10 short films, you know, to start developing the talent. We're kind of trying to jump the gun because of necessity, I think. You know, we're kind of playing catch up because we also have stories we want to tell and we want to get out there, you know. So, but we don't have our structures aren't there. You know, we have no distribution like network or structure. You know, we have. There's a lot. The country offers a lot. You know, when it comes to locations, technicians, crew. You know, but we still are underdeveloped when it comes to our storytelling, the craft of writing. You know, as a producer, I am still learning a lot. You know, there's so much to learn. It's like, you know, being on a panel with people here who have so much more experience than I do. You know, but we need to. There needs to be a policy change. The change has to be, okay, we have this 10-year plan, this vision, you know. A great example, a friend of mine, Arvin, headed the Kosovo Film Center, and in 10 years, he was empowered. In 10 years, he turned it around completely. He was given basically the financial muscle to basically train Kosovo filmmakers, you know, and in 10 years sending Kosovo filmmakers, writers, directors to training programs in Europe, different programs. And in 10 years, Kosovo ended up having films in Sundance, in Cannes, you know. But there needs to be the vision and the will to get there. And unfortunately, it's exhausting. We've been for years talking, repeating the same things. You know, I'm like a broken record. Every opportunity I get, I say the same things. If that doesn't happen, you know, it's going to be very difficult for us to actually get that level, that high quality, to end up in the Kansan, for our films to end up in the A-list festivals, you know.
But the role of the film funds is essential, and for instance, in France, as you mentioned, but the policy exists since 1945, before the independence from the French in Malta. The budget of the CNC is 700 million a year, just to give you a figure. Yes. I know. Another question over there. 2, 3, 4 questions.
Yeah, thank you for the panel. A quick question. A lot of the models that you were talking about were based on European and North American models. And I was wondering whether you've collaborated or worked on international co-productions with Asian markets. So our company's based in Taiwan. There's a Taiwan Creative Culture Agency. There's a lot of work in mainland China and Korea. And if anyone on the panel can talk about those collaborations. Again, looking at Malta's history as a colonized nation, Taiwan shares a lot of similarities. And it seems maybe those stories, there's a way to think about merging those stories and having a project that could be created with Taiwan as collaborators. Thank you.
The first country to sign a bilateral treaty with China was Canada. So, Alex, it's your turn.
I mean, I wish I could speak about, I wish I could, but I can't because I don't have any experience developing or co-producing with any of the Asian countries, unfortunately, not yet anyway. You know, but again, the world is getting smaller and language is becoming less and less of a barrier, you know, sort of whether like, and you know, sort of because, you know, early, when I started in producing 35 years ago, the language was a barrier, and that was sort of one of the barriers to co-production, even with European co-production, but particularly with the Asian countries. And you know, sort of now that is changing, and that it has changed. So unfortunately, I can't speak to it. I'm so sorry that I can't. I wish I could, but you know, sort of the world is becoming a much smaller place, and the opportunity for those co-productions are, you know, so big. And I know I have a lot of colleagues who have co-produced, you know, sort of with the Asian countries, but I unfortunately haven't.
Len, you want
Does
to?
anybody?
I have shot in Thailand some years ago before they had their tax rebate, so it was just a service. But that was a very good experience. And right now, I just recently applied for minor support from the Danish Film Institute for a film which had a substantial financing from Indonesia and Malaysia and is going to shoot there. I'm sorry that it was not accepted by the Film Institute, so I'm not going to be involved in the co-production, which I'm very sad about. And then I'm investigating co-producing another project with either Korea, Taiwan, or Japan. But it hasn't happened yet.
Other question? Yes, you and you.
Hi, thank you. I want to follow up on the gentleman's first question, which was directed towards Pierre. And I felt that when you were answering, among us kind of Maltese people who are either outside the film industry or were on the fringes looking in, I felt that there's kind of an elephant in the room that kind of we need to discuss. Do you have any idea of what I'm getting at? No. So one of your comments was that to have a gap in creative talent, writing, directing. So you're saying that there aren't any like successful filmmakers who have made a splash or anything?
No, I didn't say that. I didn't.
So they do exist.
Yes, but it needs to be nurtured like everything. If you have a plant and it's small, you need to nurture it for it to grow. And for it to grow, you need structures in place to help it grow. And we have, unfortunately, we have zero structures. You know, that's the reality. So how do we change that? How do we go? The 0 to 1 is always the hardest in anything. If in anything you do, the 0 to 1 is always the hardest. And we are still there. We haven't started climbing from 1 to 100. We're still in the 0 to 1. And we're trying, you know, we're trying hard, but we need the help from the authorities, as in a policy change, which can train people. If you look at Denmark, for example, or Norway, we as a company work a lot with the Nordics, funnily enough. It so happened. They have incredible film schools there, you know, and every year, I mean, a few years ago, actually, just before COVID broke out, we helped produce the final film for the Norwegian Film School, basically. A producer who's actually in Denmark based in Copenhagen contacted me. She was the mentor for them. And she said, there's this project, can you help them? And, and we helped them do it. Today, the producer of that film is working for Zentropa. The DP on that film is shooting feature films. We don't have that. We don't have that. And we need to either create it here or else get funding to send people to film schools overseas, to learn the craft. And come back and do our stories. This is the reality.
You also mentioned a film, and you said its run was and it got 500 euros or something. You mentioned that there was a film that was co-produced, released here, and made 500 euro. But weren't there other even Maltese movies that ran for months in theaters and were a phenomenon, and people went to see them 4, 5, 6 times in the theaters, and they were being talked about?
There are films, yes, of course. I mean, Maltese films which have, if you think of Lutzu, for example, or, of course. But they're flashes in a pan. If you speak about the films which attracted a lot of audience, they're great commercially, but they don't travel, yes? I mean, one of the very first projects I did was a documentary about Mintoff, right? I look at it today. In Malta, it was very successful. It was in the cinema for 10 weeks, It got great reviews, but looking back, it was a project that we did, I give it a 5 or 6 on 10. It wasn't up to scratch to go out there, So we have to be also aware of, because I can do something, but it doesn't mean that it's great and can cross boundaries, can get out of and travel, There's a lot of film there, and we have a lot to learn still, I'm not at all dissing. I'm a champion of Maltese talent. Whoever knows me, I have pushed Maltese talent in every way possible. I've given opportunities to people to work overseas. So I have always championed a lot of the people who today work in the industry. Started with one of the local service producers, for example. I gave him his first job when he was a student, and I sent him to Berlin to film with an experienced operator. So I've been in the industry for 25 years, and from the very beginning, I've always championed Maltese talent. But, I've had film commissioners telling me, no, we're not good enough to make film, or we cannot do film. That same film commissioner who today is a producer, who years ago used to diss me when I used to always talk about co-productions. As I said, I'm a broken record, used to shoot me down about co-productions. No. Today, he is doing co-productions. So, unless you have to keep working, keep believing, you have to keep pushing, and if everybody in this room writes to the minister and to the film commissioner telling them, we want, our film fund to be bigger, we want more opportunity, we want our rebate to change, maybe things will change,
That's what a real producer is. When the door is closed in front of him, he goes through the window. So let's go through the window. A question here, I think, and then a question.
So Anton Kalea, thank you for sharing your thoughts about co-production. There was another panel that was part of it 2 days ago, dealing with collaborations, also a little bit of co-production. I'm a big believer of co-productions. Some of you up there remember me from my past job at Euromage, where I spent almost 13 years at the main office. I'm now based here, working as a producer, also doing some consulting. And I have to echo what Pierre was mentioning. I think you mentioned a number of, I mean the whole panel actually, mentioned a number of ideas and things that should be done. It's a pity there's, as far as I know, no politician here. But the panel is being recorded, as was the one 2 days ago, so I invite the politicians and ministers to watch this. It's not only the local people who are saying this, we're seeing examples abroad. And to stay with a positive note, I think we need to change. In the end, it's quite a small change, but it needs to be done for the cash rebate. I mean, it doesn't make any sense that the money goes to the foreign producer and not to the Maltese counterpart. We need to. We've mentioned the co-production fund, which has been frozen since 2018, I guess. Again, I mean, it's good to discuss these, but if we really want to collaborate in co-productions, we need to get this working again. Same thing with the small film fund. I mean, until last year it was 600K. This year it's going to be 900K. Slightly better, but we're still so far away, you know, from everyone else in Europe. I think there is some talent. To be honest, from the talent I've seen, I think we've worked wonders, because from nothing, absolutely nothing, there is a handful of directors who can do something, I think, very interesting. Let's be careful though, because we can very easily lose them. I mean, it's what I did when I was young. There was nothing here. I just left and stayed away for 20 years. And most of them are also doing the same. You know, they just go overseas and do something there. So let's be careful as a country. I invite the policymakers to think well about this. It's good to have a servicing industry, but let's invest in something which will keep on going. Let's not depend on others for projects. Let's make our own projects. Thank you.
Thank you very much for your contribution.
I am one of the many examples of nurtured talent, or call it whatever, coming out of the Pierre Lule Academy. But we're stuck.
Alexandra didn't understand you.
I am one of the many examples of nurtured talent coming out from the Pierre Lule Academy. But we are stuck. And I think what is missing is, before we push for political will, there needs to be public will. And in order to do that, we need to nurture more of an understanding of how films are made. One of the main reasons France has a 700 million euro budget per year, because it knows that is a socialized way, a socialized economy a way of investing. That money is going in your own economy. So the circle just keeps circling. Now, we are reminded almost every day that we have one of the highest GDPs in Europe. Yet Greece is practically a bankrupt country, and they still produce more films than us. Why? Because that money that is being invested within Greece. Now, here we're doing it the other way around, unfortunately. The US would like to pretend they don't understand that concept because it's a very capitalized country, but the private is coming here. They fund their films from bank loans, and they're funding much of it from our taxpayers' money. Now, I believe in that, it's okay, but we should not be focusing just on that, because otherwise we're stuck. I have a long resume because of the Americans, and thanks to Pierre. It is long because every time I worked with Pierre, me and many others, he trusts us to push us up. But we're stuck. And I would like to ask for a reason why that change is not happening, why some service providers here are happy to be service providers, but they would like to be called producers when they're not. They're happy to manage productions while pocketing as much commission as they can. When people like Pierre is grinding away, actually trying to produce films and continue nurturing talent and pushing our own stories. So that is how films are made. Films are not made for free. I mean, people need to get paid. A film set reflects a factory floor or a quarry. You have a director who is the foreman and a bunch of people carrying boxings around and setting up lights. But at the core of that is a Maltese story. We can't go up to Canada or to France and offer anything when they have 200K to offer. We're very much ready to organize an event like this. But it kind of feels ironic and silly to be here listening to the way it's supposed to be done when we cannot implement it ourselves. And we could, we should. It can't just keep coming from the producers. The public needs to sort of invest and continue the conversations. Of course, there are Maltese films being made. In the last 5 years, there were probably 5 that were exported. We should be making 5 per year. The money is there, the talent is there, the will from the filmmakers is there. The public needs to help us out so we can push for more political will. Otherwise, we're going to remain stuck.
I think I will answer that question, which is not really a question, but you know, how you can do that. You can change the world, and that's what we are doing. That's what we are believing in, working in that industry. It will take time, but you can manage to have it, to convince politicians to give more money to your film center, to build school. If we don't believe in that, we have nothing to do in that business. That would be my last word. Thank you very much, all of you.